I really do think that the next move, though, is to figure out Stu Sternberg. A sale is still very likely.
Will you approve me to move my team there? It's not the right thing to do. It's the easy thing to do.
It changes weekly, daily, depending on what kind of the tea leaves are telling me.
Right.
As of right now, I still am more optimistic that they are going to stay in Tampa. It's not going to be like, hey, kids, let's do Epcot. Let's go see, Mickey and Minnie. And then, on Tuesday, we're going to go see the Rays play Boston. It's like, to me, it's like, why don't we just do that at home?
I just certainly hope that the slogan "Here to Stay" has a far different meaning than "Rooted in Oakland."
Stu has run out of options, and I don't know if that was the game plan. I'm just going to make this area so sick of me that by the time I go, everyone's just happy with it.
Well, there is a precedent for that approach, right? It's where I'm from out here. That's kind of what happened out here.
Here's Brody Brazil.
Evan, I appreciate your time in this conversation. You and I have never met in person before. In fact, we've only talked here for a few minutes before hitting record. But I've got the feeling that in our conversation, and however long we're going to go here, you and I are going to find out that we've got a lot in common, and we've got a lot of perspectives in common. So I'm feeling that already. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. I really love all the stuff you've been doing around the Rays Stadium saga, and I do agree. I think we're going to see things very similarly, and hopefully, I can just provide some local perspective here of kind of the viewpoints and how fans are feeling. What's kind of the vibes from everybody else who is involved in the project. So, hopefully this is informative and we can help everybody out there.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following your work this entire time. I love some of the videos, especially one of the rants early on about just how you felt. It was so raw and regular. Like it's the regular person's feeling about all of this. But yeah, I really wanted to get the perspective from somebody who's got their boots on the ground. And I guess I want to start with this. There seems to be a certain confidence that the Rays are going to stay in the Tampa Bay region, whether it's St. Pete, whether it's Tampa. I get a lot of comments here on the channel. I think there's a lot of fan, opinions that, all right, they will stay no matter what. It's going to work out this way. I don't know if you believe that, but what do you think is the prevailing thought of why a lot of people think that this isn't going to be a big deal, the team's not going to go anywhere?
Yeah, I think that the optimistic way of looking at it and what is the general tone here is that the Rays will be in Tampa and that, Stu will sell to a Tampa investment group, and that will sort of be that, especially since the, Major League Baseball has come out and said that they want to stay in the Tampa Bay area. We've heard from players who have recently met with Manfred. A lot of the messaging is coming from Commissioner Manfred,
right.
Whether he's spoken with the commissioners in Pinellas County, whether he's spoken with the players. So he's very consistent on that standpoint, and everybody's kind of riding off of that. As well as the fact that when everything was kind of coming to a head on the St. Pete side of what was going to happen, there was that stadium project. We finally heard some emergence of some Tampa investors. A couple were made public. One was kind of kept in the dark. And there is a little bit of optimism there that, hey, you put down boots in Tampa Bay. There is a fan base here. We do know the TV ratings. We know that there's interest. We just got to get them on the right side. And, as far as Tampa is concerned with the Bucks and the Lightning, there are some success stories there. Not that, the Buccaneers in their right haven't been invaded by some other fan bases either when they come to town. But, we do know that sports work in Tampa.
Right.
And for the most part, I think Tampa Bay baseball fans are just remaining optimistic on the fact that what they're being told right now is going to be true, and that they're not going to lose their team in this process.
So then what's your opinion on this? Somebody who works in sports, somebody who's talked to the stakeholders and decision makers, do you feel that same confidence, optimism?
Yeah. It changes weekly, daily, depending on what kind of the tea leaves are telling me.
Right.
As of right now, I still am more optimistic that they are going to stay in Tampa.
Yeah.
And we can get into the whole gobbledygook of what's happening in Orlando and how they're making a push and all that stuff. And I think from my perspective, do I think Orlando's a front runner here? I do not. I still think that they are a plan B option, but I do believe that they are a legitimate option. So there's sort of that give and take there of, I think a lot of people in town are writing Orlando off. I'm not writing them off. I just don't think that they're in the lead, which is why I think you're hearing them more and more. They're louder. Typically, the louder you are, and what I've kind of been told early in this process, it's also been reported, sort of the louder investment groups, the louder you are, they're typically the ones that are trying to convince, whether that's Major League Baseball, whether that's the public, they're trying to convince others, hey, look at us, we're legitimate. We can do this. You're trying to build up that support because you're playing from behind. Typically, the one that's ahead is laying in the weeds, quiet, and going about their business. You don't hear anything about them. So that the fact that we haven't heard anything on the Tampa side and we're hearing it all from Orlando, in a weird way, gives me a little bit more comfort on the Tampa side. Because it does feel like Orlando's just trying to make a push. But also on the flip side, they could also smell blood in the water, and they're trying to pounce.
Right.
So they are really mobilizing as fast as possible, which lets me also indicate, or which indicates to me that things are kind of percolating behind the scenes, and that they do feel like there is no time to waste. We have to present our best offer now, our best case now, and if we don't do it now, it's never going to happen. So definitely, it's been quiet and not quiet, which has been an interesting dichotomy, especially coming off the failed stadium deal in St. Pete, where every day was like a new chapter in the story.
You mentioned about how the Rays have kind of been quiet through all this. Yeah, they really haven't had much to say since they backed out of the deal that they proposed. And it's just amazing in reverse, right? Like the team comes up with the concept. It's the hard part to get the city and the county to sign on. St. Pete did, Pinellas County did, and then the Rays are, kind of maybe we're edging out of this, we might not do this, and then they don't do it. They totally back out of their own slogan, here to stay. And maybe they will stay at some point, but I guess here's the roadblock that I see that I can't get over. Until the team is sold to a different majority owner, I mean, it just seems to me like Ken Welch or Pinellas County commissioners. I know Chris Latvala has some feelings about this. The city and the county, from the St. Pete side, maybe not the Tampa side, but the St. Pete side, it just doesn't. It seems like there's a huge roadblock, and so I don't know how things are going to change for the better in the Tampa Bay region unless there is a new ownership. Can you see a path where it works with Sternberg even involved at all in staying in the area?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think that's a great question. I think right now in our area, there's a question. First off, Stu and Brian Auld and Matt Silverman, they've all denied the fact that money is an issue. They've also contradicted that in similar interviews.
They said it was everything. Yeah. Right. Right.
So it's like, money's not an issue, but the calculus didn't make sense. It's like, what are we talking about? This was your deal. So that's where like the things like it makes me crazy sometimes when they tell me one thing and I hear this the exact opposite a little bit later. Money is an issue. Stu Sternberg was not the richest owner in sports when he took over the Rays. Right. And while he's a billionaire now, he's still not the most liquid as far as an owner is concerned in all four sports. Not to mention on top of that, we know Major League Baseball wants to do this expansion, right? That's like going to be Manfred's way of ending his tenure. Hey, I got the expansion done. Right. I'm going to go right off into the sunset. Well, a lot of owners and Manfred are not happy with Stu because they had it lined up. Hey, Rays are done. We're all settled. They're going to get their new stadium. We can move on with the expansion. All systems are a go. Love it. And then Stu plays his card of like, well, this is my business. I can do what I want. I don't feel like it's right. I'm out. And we're going to continue to do this cycle. There is a stadium fatigue in the area, which has been here for more than a decade. Then there's also a stadium fatigue with the owners. So it's kind of a two-pronged thing because Stu has burned that bridge no pun intended, burned that bridge in St. Pete. So
forgot about that. Yeah, that's a good reference.
Mayor Welch has come out and said, I am not working with this guy again. The trust is broken. We are moving forward, and we are going to let that lease expire.
Right.
We'll get our land back.
Right.
Make sure that the Rays and Stu have nothing to do with it.
Right.
And we'll play the waiting game now until we can do what we want here in St. Pete. Things could always change, but you don't do someone dirty like that in business and then also flip it on the county commission the way that they did. There's a lot of layers to how they pointed the finger at St. Pete, whether it's the county or the city, that it's just not going to jive. On top of the fact that they lost some people who were on their side in the last election already. So St. Pete seems like not going to happen. Maybe down the road, St. Pete can be a spring training city again. They used to be back in the late 90s, for a long time, up to the late 90s. And then, Al Lang Stadium became home of the Rowdies and all this stuff. They can probably switch back if they wanted baseball in St. Pete again. Heck, the Rays could come down from Port Charlotte for all I know. But moving back over to Tampa, I don't think that things are closed off there with Tampa. But at the same point, Mayor Jane Castor, she's good friends with Mayor Welsh. And you're watching everything from across the bridge.
Right.
Are you going to 100% trust Stu Sternberg with something of, with this notoriety, with these headlines? You've already tried this back in 2019, and he ran away then. So it just, Stu has run out of options, and I don't know if that was the game plan. I'm just going to make this area so sick of me that by the time I go, everyone's just happy with it.
Well, there is a precedent for that approach, right? It's where I'm from out here. That's kind of what happened out here. Yeah. And I do want to get to maybe the Oakland, Tampa comparisons in just a second, but maybe I could start going there with this. When Rob Manfred comes out to say, hey, we still believe in this team in the Tampa Bay region, and I guess it's fine, right? If he's talking about St. Pete or Tampa, that's all kind of the same conversation, I think, to Tampa Bay fans. But when he calls Tampa a viable market, I mean, you realize he said this before about places and then let the team get unanimously voted right out of that area. There's not a lot of weight to what he's saying there about that.
Correct. And he's playing the good cop right now.
Yeah.
And he's doing what he has to do. Because, what is Manfred supposed to be out there? I mean, unless it was really at the 11th hour of we're going to run away from this city, which then you start feeling that tide turn. And I think you mentioned, it happens quick.
Yes.
Once that tide turns, there is that tipping point and it just goes.
Right.
So we're not there yet in terms of kind of flipping on the city. I think the fact is there is an investment group here in Tampa that would be viable and make it work and build on the Tampa side of things where Major League Baseball wants it, where the people here want it. But there is a point where if Major League Baseball corners Stu into selling, well, you now have to create options for yourself as an organization, which is Major League Baseball, which is where the Orlando Dreamers come in.
Right.
So it says, hey, if we're going to sell, if we're going to force Stu to sell, which has become increasingly likely considering what has precipitated over the past year, then we have to make sure that we have the right investment groups in place. And there are some viable options in Orlando. There's some viable options in Tampa. And I think if it was a tie, Tampa's going to win that tie. But if the group in Orlando and the people over there supersede what the plan is in Tampa, well, we can now parlay one versus the other.
Right.
We can stay in Florida.
Right. We're
not going to lose any market size considering Orlando's also a big market. And we can spin zone this however we want. So I think that in all of this, it all sounds great from Manfred's side of things. I do agree with you that everybody has to heed caution because his word is not gold. It's just it is just what it is now.
Right.
Just like my opinions are what it is now, and that can change when you hear one thing or something happens in another direction. Things can change, and nothing. Manfred can rip this team out of the area in 2, 3, 4 years. And you guys understand over there, it's not going to be like, well, you said this, right? It's going to be like, well, you can drive to Orlando. There's going to be no way to fix it. It's
that's going to be a baseball comment. I guarantee you, if in fact the Rays ever do relocate, and it is to Orlando, hey, it's not that far away, and it's not that big a deal. They're still in Central Florida, but you're like, wait, that's not even the same thing.
Has anyone ever driven on I-4? It's
more than 90 miles, isn't it?
Minutes, it's 90 minutes away, but it probably is 4 hours away considering that traffic, which, we can get into some of the things about Orlando as well, which don't make it as much of a slam. And my thing is, I do think that Orlando is a viable market, but now you kind of hear all the pros from Orlando, of why this can work, why it's not. I don't know about all those pros.
Here's one of them. And actually, the other part I was going to get to about all of this is if it is Orlando, right? You mentioned Stu Sternberg would sell, the whole team, part of the team, a majority of the team, 49% of the team, we don't know. My only concern about just Orlando, the whole Orlando piece, is that he at some point can turn to other Major League Baseball owners and say, well, you know what, guys? I tried in Tampa. I tried in St. Pete. They're not being nice to me, which that's his opinion, but that's what he's telling all of them who are not paying attention to anything. They're getting this firsthand from the owner. They're not being nice to me. And you know what? There's a group in Orlando that's willing to pay me top dollar for a share of this team or whatever. They've already got the stadium funded and financed. And you guys love tourism. You love big markets like this. You love something, sexy about Las Vegas and Orlando. Will you approve me to move my team there? It's not the right thing to do. It's the easy thing to do. And it might be the most financially lucrative thing. And even if there was a group in Tampa or St. Pete that said, hey, we'll give you $1.6 billion for your team. But he's like, yeah, they'll give me 2.1. I mean, It's almost like as much as, again, we know what the right thing to do is, I fear that they'll do the easy thing in all of this. And I feel like the easy thing is painting itself as Orlando right now.
Yeah, and I think there is a little bit of using Orlando as a negotiating tactic.
Yes.
Right? Because that's the other thing, too, with Manfred is he's not going to – well, look, it is not a coincidence that at the same time a bunch of information came out against Major League Baseball, angry at Stu Sternberg, and potentially forcing him to leave. Right? That is a coordinated effort where – someone very high up there said, you can hit the go button on this. Right. We're going to send out a flare signal.
Right.
We're going to send out a flare and we're going to see how it goes. And then you nothing's happened, right? It's been quiet now. Right. The flare signals are pretty calculated, but Manfred is going to work in Stu's best interest to make sure that the Rays are also going to get sold for the most amount of money possible because that's going to help all the other owners, right?
Exactly.
When you want to sell your club, if the Rays sell for $2 billion, imagine what my club sells
Valuation is everything. Totally agree with you. Yeah.
So there is an element of where, Manfred could be against the ownership of Stu Sternberg, but also be in his corner to make sure that Stu is going to make the most amount of money and do what he can for the betterment of baseball, its owners, to make sure that valuation is taken care of, that it's sold at the right price, and that we can move forward in that regard. So I think there's some of that. I do question Orlando and these people who are over there are not dummies either. I don't know how you can look at what Stu Sternberg has done in the Tampa Bay region, what he's done with the team, what he's done with the stadium stuff, and say, oh, I'm going to give you a bunch of money. You get to still run the team. I'm also going to build you a stadium.
Right.
It just seems
doesn't feel like that way, right?
That's what I'm saying. It just seems like it's too good to be true to do all that stuff. For me, if Orlando's going to make a run at Stu, they want the whole thing. Right. It ain't going to be some of this hey, Stu, you're sticking around. We're going to keep you. It's going to be no. If you're coming here, if we're getting the Rays, that's going to be our team with our people. You're done here. You did your Tampa Bay thing. We're cutting that off. Yeah. It's a new future for us. So I don't like, and they said, yeah, we'll be partial people. I just think that's maybe more of a, trying to be the super nice guy out there and again, create really good momentum for Orlando. I personally don't buy that. That would, to me, from a business sense and in my business sense, pales so much in comparison to somebody, especially in Orlando, who built an entire empire out of his basement. I think they know what to do. It's not going to be, let me desperately get a baseball team so that I can let Stu still handle every benefit that comes with it. That doesn't seem right to me from an owner's side. So
from the A's and Rays perspective, right, if it is Vegas for the A's ultimately, and if Orlando's going to pitch itself to the Rays and their uncertainty right now, tourism is always mentioned. And the one thing I struggle with, and the A's have gone obviously much farther down the road with this by saying that, hey, 30% of the fans at our games, we're expecting them to be tourists. And I'm thinking, you've probably been to Vegas, Evan, right? Before, yeah?
Yeah, I have.
It doesn't feel like it's, hey, let's go to Vegas and spend 4 hours at a Major League Baseball game. There's so many other things that we don't normally get to do that's what we're going to do. And even if it is your team, like a lot of people do with the Raiders, they come in for a weekend. Yeah, but that's a once a week 8 home games a year type situation. Baseball, 81 home dates. I never saw the idea of tourism for baseball in Las Vegas being like, that's what you should lean on. I feel a little bit differently about it in Orlando because I do feel like it's more of a family-friendly tourism approach. And by the way, people always say, oh, Las Vegas tourism, that's $40 million a year. Orlando tourism, they say, is like $80 million a year. We're talking a 2-to-1 ratio. I do understand that the tourism piece maybe in Orlando is got a little bit more legs. It had, but I still don't think that's a great thing to lean on. If you're trying to do a sustainable fan base, who else does that? Nobody does it for a reason.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with you. When it comes to Vegas, I feel like baseball were the laggards there, right? Like, oh, like that's where everything's going, the corporate sponsorships, whatever. Let's just get our boots in the ground there. But as you said, like, you missed the boat. Like, to me, NHL owned that area, right? They got in at the right time. Right. They did it right.
Organic, very organic.
That is a hockey town. Now, you're now going to oversaturate to market. And if you're just appealing to tourists, like, the only people who are going to show up to those games are the ones that have wiped all their money away at the Bellagio and they need something cheap to do for the day because they've really just, had a rough go of it. But when it comes to Orlando and the tourism stuff, which on paper makes a lot of sense when you put the numbers out there. But I want to ask anybody out there, when your kids are screaming at you, I want to go to Disney, I want to go to Disney, and you plan this trip to Disney, which, by the way, is uber expensive, and you do that, and you're a parent, you're walking around Epcot from 8 in the morning to 5 at night. Are you going to want to go to a baseball game after that? Like, there's no way any parent is going to sign up for tickets to a baseball game when they are just running around their kids day in and day out. And that's not going to be a part of the calculus as far as their dream family vacation when it's already going to cost them like $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to make that trip happen. It's not going to be like, hey, kids, let's do Epcot. Let's go see, Mickey and Minnie. And then, on Tuesday, we're going to go see the Rays play Boston. It's like, to me, it's like, why don't we just do that at home? Like, I think you're still going to find the same problems there that you have here, where you have a bunch of people who live or former East Coasters, right? New York, Boston, Philly. I mean, local fans here were very upset that the Phillies invaded Steinbrenner Field this past weekend. And it's like, I don't know what to tell you. The Phillies are here every other year, and there's a lot of East Coasters. They live here. They want to see their team.
Right.
They do spring training in Clearwater. That's what's going to happen. I don't see that any different in Orlando. And in my opinion, I get it. They have a more swath of people to maybe pull from that they can, but it's not going to be pretty. And, and it's not like the Orlando Magic, despite more recently, they have been crushing capacity numbers, but over the course of a 10-year period or whatever, if you look at the capacity numbers or the attendance, there's nothing that signals to me like, oh my God, we are, at capacity every night, brimming with people showing up. They want to see their team. Like, there's no evidence that points to any of that stuff. So I'm a little bit skeptical on that. I think that's a very convenient bullet point for a lot of people out there who are trying to bring the team to Orlando. And I see the traffic issue is a huge concern in Orlando, just like going across the bridge here. I-4 is a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare to get around Orlando. I don't see how that's alleviated with building a stadium. So there are just some things where, and again, I'm kind of bringing up all the negative Nelly stuff. I do think Orlando is a viable market. I'm just trying to provide balance to where I'm just like not buying everything.
Well, and there's a lot of Orlando talk and hype and conversation coming out. And I think that's been my whole point in all of this. And I do want to ask maybe what Floridians think or if they know anything about the Oakland situation, because I do think there are some parallels. It's an apples and oranges situation, but we're still talking fruit here. Like there is something to learn from, I think, where that whole situation has been. But I actually want to go back to this. We've been talking the whole time about the long-term home and forever home for the Rays. Is it Orlando? Is it Tampa? Is it St. Pete? How about next year? I mean, from what I understand, the roof and the roof only have been okayed to be replaced at Tropicana Field. There's still the whole other half of like $25-30 million, whatever, to fix all the internals, all the insides. Do we even know that there's going to be a proper home for them in St. Pete next year?
It's a great question because, again, as somebody who's been covering this, right, that's been part of the issue is that you're told one thing and then it shifts on a dime for a reason that I can't really tell you. So going back to the end of last year Brian Auld got in front of St. Pete City Council and said, we do not want, they approved it, right? They said, we're going to fix the trop.
Right.
St. Pete City Council said, we are going to do our job in the contract and fix the trop.
Because they have to. Right.
Yeah, exactly. And Brian Auld said, don't do it. He, like, literally what happened was they approved it. Brian Auld was mad, talked with a bunch of reporters in the back of the room. They started tweeting. The city council saw the tweets, brought Brian Auld back up and said, what the heck is this? And Brian Auld said, we don't want to do parallel planning because if you rebuild the trop, then we got to prepare for a season in the trop and without the trop.
Right.
And at that point, he said, we do not believe that the stadium will be able to be fixed in time. So we rather you just not do it.
Right.
To the point where city council then reversed the vote that they voted for so that they can vote against it. It was a whole thing. It was crazy. And then all of a sudden, like a month later, they're like, we expect them to repair the trop. We expect it to be ready for the beginning of the season. And it's like, where did that come from?
Right.
That was not your stance literally like 4 weeks ago.
Exactly.
And it's like the last time I've heard from Brian Auld publicly, by the way.
Right.
So, I don't know if Major League Baseball stepped in. I don't know if Major League Baseball also said, we're going to put some money up. We're going to make this happen.
Right.
Stop your complaining.
Right.
We're going to get this done. This is enough.
You need some you need some stability somewhere. But herein lies the other question about that. Could the Rays be setting this up as a tactic for, okay, trop's not getting fixed. Trop's not ready. Well, you know what? The Yankees have said Steinbrenner Field is a one-off. It's a one-year only thing, $15 million of rent, and this is our favor to you, but you can't overuse it. Fine. What if the Rays, as this baseball season goes on, what if they say, well, you know what? The trop's not getting fixed. That won't be done in time. The Yankees won't let us stay here. There is a facility up in Orlando, which is a Disney property. It's wide open. It could be a good, the similar thing for us. I guess I worry that is like, oh, well, then it's just a temporary slide up to Orlando, which then obviously changes the whole dynamics of this. I worry about that too.
Yeah, I think that, in my opinion, all the wording and everything that's been told to me as of now is that they are expecting to be ready for opening day 2026.
Okay, so
they
will approve you think the other part of the repairs, yeah.
Correct. Yeah, I think that and whatever logistics they got to do and legalities and all that stuff, I think it will fall in line of them making sure. The roof, at least to my understanding, was really the tough part there, especially the material, because for insurance, it has to be repaired the same exact way as what it was before. They can't upgrade things. They can't change things. It's got to be repaired the same way that it was before. And so there's a little bit of minutia in that sort of regard. But as well as everything else, I do think that if they do not have a stadium ready for the beginning of opening day, well, it's still the best part of Florida weather. If you have to go over to Walt Disney for a month or whatever, you can make that happen, and you can probably sell it to the players of, hey, we're going to do this we're going to have you do a homestand there for like 10 days.
Right.
But we're going to put you, where this season they're on the road or they're on the home, they're home for pretty much all of April and May.
Right.
You can also reverse that trajectory and say, hey, we're going to be on the road for all of April and May, and you're going to have a lot of home games on the back end. So Major League Baseball can also help you with the scheduling. And if it's just like a 1 or 2 series thing, absolutely, they can go to Walt Disney. They've played Rays games in the past for like a series. They've gone over there and have played in Orlando. As I forget, it's been a long time, probably like early 2000s or so, or maybe even late 2000s. I'll have to go back and look at the time, but they have done it before. And I think all that is very viable. And sure, they can do a whole thing of like, let's see what the market looks like. At least when the Rays come and play the Brewers for a series or whatever it might be. But I'm sure that if it's a 1 week thing, that people would support that and whatnot. But it is a possibility. I that is definitely not ruled out.
We watched the situation for the A's in Sacramento, and they don't sell out. Even, I don't know, any games. They keep saying 12,000 is a sellout when the capacity is 14,000. And now there's some early complaints of, it's pretty hot there, like when they just played the Yankees this past weekend, but it's only mid-May. It's only in the 80s. It gets to the 110s up there. I'm curious what the reaction has been for Rays fans seeing games outdoors for the first time ever for your team. Being at Steinbrenner Field, I do understand that heat has already been an issue, like in the month of April. people passing out and stuff. But generally though, like it's a good thing that they're there. Like people are enjoying the Tampa experience.
Yeah, I think everyone's enjoying the Tampa experience. They're not enjoying the product on the field where
they lose all those games.
They can't win. They can't. They went through a 7-game losing streak at home. But there is an issue with 1 o'clock and 4 o'clock games because there's no shading for the lower bowl. And I can only imagine when we get to the summer. And in the summer, you got to remember they shifted times to 12:05. So they moved it up. They tried to make it earlier in the day.
Right.
But it is going to be, crazy to sit out there in that heat once we get to the middle of the summer with how little covering there is. So, the night games are great, actually. Right now, there's this nice breeze because it's so windy and there's a lack of, anything really blocking it. So those have been really comfortable experiences. The day games have been exhaustive and people are just frying out there. So, with that, I think people understand to take the experience with a grain of salt because it's not a Major League Baseball stadium.
Right.
And there's only so much that you can do. But for the most part, people commuting, people having it there right across from Ray J, I think for the most part, people have been happy with it. And except all but one game, they have been sold out, which I think is important for Tampa and what they need to do to really convince people, hey, not that 10,000 is anything to brag about, but you better sell out to 10,000.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the thing I've observed again with the A's versus Rays situation. And granted, the A's are playing in a city that's very temporary right now. The Rays have not gotten anywhere close to saying we're leaving. This still is their market, but it just does feel like the A's can't draw even as well as the Rays are. But again, I want to bring it back to those two cities and these two teams and situations. And I'm not here to say at all that I think this is an identical situation. I guess what I was alluding to before is that there are enough similarities that worry me from the Tampa perspective of history could easily repeat itself. There's kind of a precedent that's been set, that's being set here that, if an owner wants something and goes to baseball, that there will be a unanimous vote. Evan, you and I know this. If you put 30 people in a room here in 2025 and said, all of you need to agree on this, whoever agrees unanimously on anything here in the very polarized 2025. But I guess the point is I don't know if Floridians look at the Oakland thing and say, should we have been paying attention to that? Are we in that same spot? I'm going to assume that most probably have no clue about it. But I'm curious if you think there's anything to learn from the past about this current situation.
Yeah, I think that at least from an outsider's perspective out there, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because maybe we can, help bridge the gap there of what kind of, some of the thoughts are. With at least Fisher and the Oakland Vegas situation, he went full on, I'm going to be the villain mode. And Stu, at least to his credit, he refuses to go full villain. He refuses to, look, he operates his team in the same way, right? He's not out there trading, he'll trade players and get a bunch of prospects back, yes, but, he's not out there saying, Yandy's gone, Brandon Lau's gone, I'm going to sell Junior Caminero, like the Athletics did a handful of years ago, where they had a great nucleus and just blew it up and said, I'm putting nothing out there. I'm going to make sure that this product dies on the field.
It's the movie Major League.
Yeah, exactly. That you guys hate it out here, and that you guys don't show up, and I'm going to just shove it in your face.
Right.
So that at least was my perspective of just really sad state of affairs of what happened out there. And out here, Stu has yet to kind of pull that cord of I'm going to fully mess with the on-field product.
Right.
Even though they're not playing well, there's a multitude of factors that go into that. Also, I do think that Fisher has deep pockets, could legitimately make anything work if he wanted to make it work. He just didn't want to. And I do question what Stu's pockets are and the liquidity and how much he can truly afford and what he's trying to gather from other people and certain investments to make sure he's still majority owner. I think there's a general bottom line where one is, worthy of being in the ownership club and the other is fighting to stay in it. So I think that's also another thing that I recognize with the two markets. I would say that the flip side is, Oakland was a situation that had so much history, deep rooted in the community. There were a lot of good times and things that happened there. And Tampa Bay in this area has had the team for a little more than 25 years. So, theoretically, ripping the roots out from that shouldn't be as hard as ripping the roots out from Oakland, where you have a situation where, you've already built up that fan base to where the kids grow up and they're athletics fans. Like right now in the Tampa Bay area, an argument from many out here, especially within the Rays organization, is like, we haven't even turned 30 yet. Like we're just starting to have kids who grew up Rays fans have kids and create that generational type of fandom. And to that, I do sort of understand that it does take a long time, a lot longer than people might give it credit for. But to me, those are some of the differences, at least between the two sides. And the fact that I would say the other difference was more so that there was an actual deal agreed upon between owner and city to make something happen, and owner bailed out. So, we never got to the finish line in the Oakland situation. Bunch of proposals, a bunch of all these things. Here, we did. It was put up or shut up time. Both sides said, we're going to put up. And then all of a sudden, it was one side saying, you know what? Never mind. And using 2 hurricanes as pretty much an excuse after he used the county commissioner as an excuse. So the county commissioners. So that's, to me, it's like, it just, those are sort of the big differences, at least for me. But in terms of like the general structure of moving a team out of an area, I think those big picture sort of tropes, I think those are similar. I think there aren't many differences there. It's just when you really get into the granular, let's dig into the organization, let's dig into the owners, their financial backgrounds, that's where I find the most differences.
I just certainly hope that the slogan "Here to Stay" has a far different meaning than "Rooted in Oakland." Both teams are like, "Oh, we're doing it, we're staying," and then now they kind of blow it up. So I just got one more thing for you, and this is less of a, I think you know the answer to this, because neither of us does. It's more of an instinct thing. Like, what's the next big major thing, major development to have happen here? Like, I don't even, it's kind of been silent with the exception of Orlando emerging. And to your point earlier, you knew they would. They smell this blood in the water. Them aside, like, I don't know what happens here and when it gets announced. You would have to think that by the All-Star break of this baseball season, the team's going to have to, agree to a Major League Baseball schedule that's going to come out, whether they're in Tampa or Orlando or the Moon or wherever they're playing their home games. But I don't know what happens next, and I don't know when it happens. And I'm wondering if you have any gut feeling on either of those two things.
The one question that I'm still trying to figure out, which I haven't been able to get in, at least asking certain people, Matt Silverman, after everything kind of unfolded, said, hey, we got 4 years to decide what to do. I don't know where that came from. I don't know what this 4 years means.
The lease maybe he's talking about at Tropicana Field, but that's...
Yeah, and that's very possible.
Yeah.
But to me, again, that contradicts everything they've always said, where it's like, hey, we need to get this deal done, by, 2023, so that we can start building in 2024, 2025, so we can be ready by the lease ending. And now all of a sudden, instead of doing this 4-year plan to get something built so that you can be ready when the lease ends, now the messaging is, well, we got 4 years to decide. How is that possible that you have 4 years to decide? What is your home? What is your home in the future? All of a sudden, now you've gone from, we got to plan that many years ahead to, we can wait until the last second and figure something out. There's something that hasn't connected with me there of what that is. And to me, I got to find that answer. And I'm still searching for that answer of what that 4 years means and what they plan to do at the end of their lease, which we know has extended by a year because they're not in town due to the hurricanes. To me, there is a world where something happens really fast. We don't sniff anything and then boom, sale. It's just going to be right on the spot. Nobody has it. It's just going to come out and it's going to be wheels are in motion. Here's the game plan. Here's where the stadium's built. This is what we're going to do. We flushed it all out. it's, everything's been working behind the scene for months, and we've been doing it quietly and diligently and yada, yada, yada. And then we'll start going in motion. I think that's the optimistic way for people in this area to look, is that it's just going to happen one day and we're not going to expect it. I'm going to wake up from my slumber and just see an, oh crap, like, oh man, I got to get into work.
Maybe it's a good thing. Maybe it's a really good thing for everybody, right? So,
but yeah, I think that I really do think that the next move though is to figure out Stu Sternberg. I think that a sale is still very likely. So how long does he clutch? Right? Is he going to clutch until the bitter end with this team? Is he going to allow Major League Baseball to squeeze him out?
Right.
Is he going to fight with them? Or is he just going to give in and just give up? I think that, to me, the next thing that I'm sort of looking at here is Stu Sternberg. What is your plan? What is your future? Because I think he, his days are dwindling as owner. And that, I think, is going to be the tipping point of which direction we decide that we're going to go, because we do, even though the gasworks thing might not be viable based on what was said recently, there is still the fairgrounds out there. There are still some locations that work within the Tampa Bay region, not to mention Manfred months ago met with Governor DeSantis, and Manfred's not usually strolling into the governor's office, right? So one thing that's kind of in the back of my head, there's nothing to it, but it's in the back. Well, the fairgrounds is state-owned land, so you got to work with the politics of that.
Right.
You got to make sure that you can do something that you can do there. And it's been a long rumored site. We've gone in, got out, but its location off of I-4 and, maybe building a bright line station. There's a bunch of things that people have floated out there, but that's all to say that everything is still in play for the Tampa Bay area in the sense of they can bring a team to that side of the bridge. But I still think it all hinges on what is happening with Stu. And that's going to be I think that's where we all have to look.
A lot of viewers here on the YouTube channel are going to appreciate me just saying Ybor Harbor, because I was saying Eber before. And
you were saying Eber?
Oh, man. And I didn't think I was. I thought I was, because, they were like, the first time they corrected me, it was Ybor, like a bore, like you're boring a tunnel.
Yeah.
Like, got it. And then apparently I said it the wrong way in a few more videos. So.
Anyway. We got to have some patience out there. It's not like it's not like Jane Doe over here. It's a hard name to know if you're not saying it every day. You're not from the area.
I'm just trying. But no, you know what? On that note, Evan, I just want to say thank you so much for your time. This means so much to get the local perspective, and I hope we can keep in touch. And I don't know if I can help you, but you've certainly helped me in this audience. And people have been asking for it. They're saying, hey, how about talk to somebody who's actually there? Great. I think I found a great resource, and I just hope you keep up the work on this, because, I do think whatever happens here, and I know this from personal experience, documenting this process as you've been doing is the stuff that 10, 15 years down the road, people are going to turn to and say, well, when things were thick, who was there doing it, and what was the coverage of this like? So I know you feel like it's your job, but I also feel like you're helping document history however it shakes out here. So keep up the good work, buddy.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I'll keep saying that to myself when I sit through hours and hours of city council meetings.
Right.
Of when these that's the thing is in this industry. Typically my news reporter friends, they don't feel bad for me. They got to do that a bunch of times, but certainly I have done a lot more of that than I ever thought I would in my career. And I just think it's really important for the people in this community. There's certainly a passion for it. There's an anger, there's a frustration, which is all very fair. And I think that it's my job to make sure that I also work very hard to try to find those answers and to give clarity on a situation that is very complicated with a moving target week to week. And especially, you referenced the commentary that I did, that is born out of the fact that I am, people always got to remember, I'm a conduit from the fans to the owners or the players or whatever it might be. I don't work for either. I got to be the one that puts the messaging in the middle. And it gets to a point where if one side is kind of giving us the runaround and essentially lying and trying to circle us around, it's my job to at least present the voice for the fans that are sick and tired of kind of being lied to. And, I know that when everything happened in the Oakland situation, there were a lot of local reporters there who did a great job of really voicing the frustrations for their community. Yep. And that is a part of our job and my job here. So I'll continue doing it. And, I just really appreciate you having me on.
Hey, you're welcome anytime. I promise you I won't bug you for at least a couple weeks, but then I might bug you and ask you for some more time. Evan, thank you so much, buddy.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.